Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. It's been a really long time since I've made any kind of long form video, but I have been itching to try some traditional mediums, specifically acrylic markers. So today we're going to be working with JusArt acrylic markers. I have the 48 count set for no particular reason other than these markers are on sale. So it was the brand that I chose, but we're going to see how it goes. So today I'm going to be working with a self-portrait, and I chose this self-portrait because self-portraits or portraits in general are the easiest thing for me to create and paint with. And since I'm trying out a new medium, I want to make sure that I have as few obstacles available as possible. Now, before I start any portrait, one of the things that I like to do is outline the portrait with a waterproof medium, whether that is a ballpoint pen, a brush tip pen, or a Sharpie. The key here is going to be making sure that I outline everything that I need to paint so that I can see what I'm painting, but also so that the graphite does not smudge once the surface gets wet. So this is a super valuable step that I take, and I started this some years ago when I was painting portraits quite regularly. Once I started to outline the portraits before I began painting, this kind of changed the game for me. In terms of like making sure again that things don't smudge. I can always see what I'm drawing, and then it helps me to sort of work through any sort of, it just kind of helps keeps things as smooth as possible when it comes to painting the portraits. So again, I chose self-portrait because I wanted to limit obstacles, right? When trying any new medium, that is one of the things I kind of take into consideration. I don't know how to use acrylic markers. I am quite familiar with acrylic paints, but the markers themselves are a slightly different animal. Now, they are very similar to acrylic paints in that they dry darker than the initial color. They also dry quickly, very fast. These particular markers don't blend as well as acrylic paints, and for those of you who've ever worked with acrylic paints, that may seem kind of funny because they dry so fast. People tend to have obstacles or challenges blending out acrylic markers, not acrylic markers, but acrylic paints. But working with acrylic markers, that obstacle is doubled, right? Because you're working with one specific color that you can't necessarily mix in a palette the way that you would with the acrylic paints, and so that again presented its own set of challenges. So again, outlining helped me out a lot because that is going to help me decide how opaque things are. Once I get into actually coloring this image, it also helps me get in the groove of painting, because painting and working in traditional mediums is something that I have not done in a very long time. For the last 5 or 6 years or so, I have been focusing primarily on digital illustration and digital paintings, just because I had been working with my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and so it was just a lot easier for me to work from my computer at my desk as opposed to pulling out the easel, pulling out palettes, pulling out paint and water and keeping the brushes clean and all of that. So I focused primarily in the digital space, but lately I've just really been itching to do some traditional work. So here we are. So I'm going to finish outlining this. It's not going to take very long. And then the next step is going to be swatching the paints to see how they best show up. So this part doesn't really take too long. I did edit it a little bit just so it wouldn't be so boring for you guys. But this is pretty much the steps that I take before starting any painting. I don't care who it is, what it is. I always outline with a dark marker to make sure that I get through this part fairly quickly. Now, because I'm very unfamiliar with this particular medium and I'm buying a set of markers from a brand I'm quite unfamiliar with, the first thing I'm going to want to do is create swatches. Now, it came with its own swatch card, which is cool, but because I am working on a darker toned paper or a substrate, it's not a paper, it is Plein air panels by a company called, I feel like Guerilla art or something like that, but it's a darker medium. Because of that, I wanted to make sure that I had a true representation of how these markers would show up on the substrate that I was using. So I took a spare sheet. This one is a 5x7, and I took a little bit of time to make sure I shook up every marker, because in this case these markers needed to be shaken up and I went through each and every color to see how they showed up on the page. Now in the swatches, they seemed to be pretty opaque, which I liked. I love the fact that they were very liquidy. Some people refer to this as juicy. They were very juicy colors and paints, and I wanted to make sure that I shook it out so that I knew exactly how it would dry so that I can kind of have good expectations moving forward into the portrait. Now we're starting here with our portrait, again all outlined with the markers. And I'm using my color swatches as a guide because again, this is my very first time trying out these markers. I didn't do any like preliminary sketches or anything like that to begin this process. And quickly I realized how limited the palette is. Okay, so there are 48 colors in this particular pack. And I feel like there's a good range of colors. There's about 5 in each category, 5 yellows, purples, pinks, reds, and so on and so forth. The issue that I have with this pack, and something that I kind of came across as I was researching different sort of affordable packs of markers without like going the full 240 count, that we see other creators use. I wanted to find something that was reasonable and easy for, an entry level artist, or just something that you want to get into or buy just to try out. So I went with the 48 pack, and I found again that it was extremely limiting. But for me, it wasn't so much that it was limiting in range in terms of color, but it's very limiting in terms of value, right? So that means from light to dark. So it had plenty of light colors across the board in every sort of color group and color family. There were lots and lots of light colors. But because I am a person of a certain skin tone with richer skin tone, I had a very challenging time finding colors within this set that fit my specific skin tone. Now what that did was it challenged me to use other colors to illustrate the lights and darks of the portrait that I was aiming to create. I don't know how much more difficult it would be. I would imagine quite a bit more difficult if I had a richer skin tone, a much deeper, darker, richer skin tone, or if I was painting someone with a deeper, darker, richer skin tone. So one of the things I would like to challenge myself to do in the future, just to kind of try it out and kind of see, is to actually create a portrait with someone with a darker skin tone, just to be able to see if I still feel as limited. I know that for the picture that I was painting, I was using like neon oranges and blues and things like that. Now on the one hand, it definitely pushed my creativity, which was a lot of fun to experience as I was creating this portrait. Definitely had to be very creative in the way that I represented, again, the value in my skin, the color of my skin, and the tones of my skin. But I would have liked to have had a few darker colors, right? A few browner colors, a few richer colors. Like sometimes it depends on, what sort of palette the companies are working with, because sometimes dark can be ashy, not necessarily ashy, richer, right? Fuller, more vibrant colors, but darker in value. So I had to be very, very creative about this. I'm super pleased with the way that it turned out. However, again, that limit was very pronounced once I started to work with these markers. Again, this is my first time with these. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but just sort of exploring this new medium was a whole lot of fun. And so this picture is a picture that I had taken in 2018. This was something that I had done specifically to highlight my hair in this picture. So a long time ago, I had locks, right? And my hair was extremely long. It was like down to past my waist. It was down past my waist. And I was going to a wedding. And so I was trying to find a way to look cute for the wedding. So I wanted to make sure that my hair was sort of put up in a way, or like curled in a way, because anytime I would go anywhere special, that's what I would do. I would do like these pipe cleaner curls. And so I was on YouTube and I was looking for hairstyles for locks. And I remember finding like a tutorial or two, it might have been a couple, that was focused on these things called lock loops. And so it's very similar to what I would always do, which was to curl my hair in these pipe cleaners. But in this case, instead of leaving them down, you would loop them up into these like ring curls, and then you would let them dry. You could wear them like that, or you could pull them down or take them down and it would be curly. So I was like, okay, that's cute. That's very different, right? I was like, I'll try this for this wedding. I don't think I had ever been to, I think this might have been maybe the second wedding that I've ever gone to. So I was like, I'm gonna go to this wedding. I'm gonna have my hair in these lock loops. Child, by the time I woke up the next day to me, I taken this picture. I was like, I look like Michael Jackson from The Wiz. So I always thought this picture was cute. I always thought that it always makes me laugh. It was something that I had sent my mom, like, my look, I look like Michael Jackson from The Wiz. And then when I put my glasses on, I look like, what is it, Velma from Scooby-Doo? I was going through some things, but I liked it. I liked it, but I always really enjoyed this picture. So I knew getting these markers that this was the picture that I wanted to draw, because there's so much life and personality, and it just feels really silly to me, just my expression and just the reaction of me waking up the next day. Of course, I saw my hair the night before that I'd done it. I was like, oh, this is good, but I woke up and I was like, this is different, right? It's very different, but I rocked it. I wore this hairstyle to that wedding. I have some pictures I'll include on the screen so you guys can see what it looked like. But I always just love this picture. It always puts a smile on my face. And I just remember having the conversation with my mom, like, "Ma, look what I did," So painting this portrait again was a lot of fun. Because I was again approaching a new medium, I wanted to make sure that I was painting something that I was familiar with. Now, I am always pro sort of make things as easy for yourself as possible so that you can kind of enjoy the process of creating. So I knew I was going in doing a portrait, right? Portraits are my absolute favorite thing in the world to create. And so because I did not want to try and figure out someone else's face, my idea was to just go with a self-portrait. I saw an artist once recently, I think his Black Bean CMS, who was painting a self-portrait and was saying that he doesn't know if it's odd that he does so many self-portraits, but he just really enjoys it because it captures a moment in time, and it kind of captures who he was at the time that he created or took the portrait, or created that face or that representation of himself. And I feel the exact same way. This picture captures a moment of me being real silly, right? Me trying something that I had saw on the internet that I wasn't really sure how it turned out, and then just kind of being confident about wearing it out, right? And so this picture, now I look slightly different from the time that I took this picture. This picture was taken in 2018. It's now 2026, so this is quite a few years ago. So I do look slightly different. My hair, of course, is different. But again, I always really love this portrait just because of how silly I was like, look at me. Now, as I am moving my way through this portrait, again, I'm starting to notice that it is very difficult to blend these markers together. So I ended up pulling out some colored pencils. Now, recently I found a whole stash of art supplies that I had bought at least 10 years ago. These colored pencils are a part of that stash of art supplies. I probably didn't even need to buy the markers, but it was something that I wanted to try out. I had been seeing all over YouTube and different social media platforms, and I wanted to try them. So I was like, since I'm getting slightly back into traditional medium, I want to just treat myself, What is an artist if an artist doesn't hoard art supplies? So I ended up pulling out these colored pencils, and immediately, where I wasn't really sure about how I was feeling about the portrait, the colored pencils began to kind of bring it all together, and I was really, really pleased with that. So I was able to sort of pull out colors. I had two sets. So I have the Soho color pencils from Jerry's Artarama, and I also have the Faber Castell set. The Faber Castell offered me a lot more range in value. So I had a lot of browns, and I had a lot of very rich colors that I could add to this particular illustration. And the Soho set did really good with like blues and light colors, yellows, and things like that. So I was able to sort of use those pencils to blend things out, make them kind of cohesive and come together. Also playing up the fact that I was using colors like purples and neon oranges and yellows and blues in place of actual skin tone to add value. And so again, once I started to work with the color pencils, I felt a whole lot better about it. Now granted, as I'm watching this back, I see that the portrait came together pretty well, but I was feeling a little unsure about how I felt about it all together, right? Because again, I'm using colors that I would not necessarily have picked up to paint a portrait. Now on the flip side of that, I remember in college when I was working in a lot of my painting classes, I would grab colors such as blues and greens to put in and mix with the flesh tones to represent reflective light, or just to sort of it would be whatever I would see in the skin, which oftentimes would not be the obvious choice, the local color, if you will. But I didn't mean to do that here, right? So it's one thing to do it purposefully, right? It's another thing to be sort of left at the mercy of the medium that you're using. But again, that limitation sort of pushed me towards some innovation, I would say. Now, I see a lot of artists. One of my favorites is Thomas Evans, who goes by Detour 303, I think his name is. There are a couple others that paint portraits similar to this, where they have lots and lots of color within the skin tone. So as I was working my way through this, those people kind of came to mind. I was like, well, you know, they're really great about using various colors to represent lighter and darker skin, so why not push myself to do the same thing? So overall, I really enjoyed this process. Now, in terms of the markers, I don't know yet how I would use them moving forward, but I did enjoy making this small portrait. So maybe that is something that I would do just sort of as a warm up, or something to break the pace from doing so much digital art and spending so much time on my computer. So I don't know, we'll see. But if you like this kind of video, if you'd like to see me do more of these portraits with the acrylic markers, especially when it comes to darker skin tones, because again, I kind of want to see how well this specific pack does, or sort of how I navigate creating darker skin tones with this specific pack, because again, it is quite limited in the range of colors that I had access to. So if you would like to see more of that, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you've tried acrylic markers, you know, let me know your thoughts of, if you have a favorite brand, if you have a medium that you would like to see me try, let me know in the comments. And I hope that you guys enjoy. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Until next time, I hope you guys have a happy, creative, and prosperous week. Peace.